I'm 23 years old and my name is Ava. Given what I'm going to tell you, you may be asking how a girl my age ends up living with her uncle. To be honest, I also never thought this would occur. I spend the most of my time drawing, designing, and working as a freelancer while I'm a graphic design student. Since my parents' divorce when I was small, life has been difficult. In an attempt to find stability, I moved about a lot. In the end, I stayed with my Uncle Nathan. There was no plan for it. In order for me to continue sharing more amazing genuine tales like this one with you, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. And because this narrative is going to be so fascinating, remember to like the video and watch it through to the conclusion. To demonstrate your support, kindly click the like button. It all began when I needed a place to stay while I finished college and my mom had to leave for work. The only family member who could assist was my Uncle Nathan. He and his spouse, Victoria, have been wed for a few years. They reside far from the city in a lovely home in the country. I had assumed it would be another short-term relocation to a more tranquil area, but things didn't work out that way. I believe that after a few months, I had gotten used to the house, the routine, and the calm. However, I must tell something that happened today. Nathan was asleep when I entered his room, and that's when it all began. To keep up with the rest of this story, remember to subscribe to the channel before I explain. Let me briefly introduce Nathan to you. He's not your typical uncle. He has always been more of a mentor to me than a relative. He helped me fix items around the house, taught me how to ride a bike, and even got me my first automobile when I was 18. Nathan was therefore the first person my mom thought of when she needed someone to take me in. He is nice, patient, and considerate. However, I was moving in with more than just him. Victoria, his wife, had been involved for some time. I wasn't sure about her at first, but they got married 2 years ago. She is older than Nathan, and I felt alienated in their house because of her. I initially tried not to bother anyone by staying in the guest room at the far end of the house. As time went on, things grew less awkward, and Victoria began to offer me tips on cleaning, cooking, and other domestic tasks. We weren't the best of pals. However, it was less tense than it had been. I believed that things were improving. However, I've seen something lately that I can't describe. I became more attracted to Nathan the more time I spent with him. His occasional hand gesture, his smiles, and the way he would glance at me when he believed I wasn't listening. Something was different. I was unable to ignore it. We started to become tense with one another. An energy from which there was no escape. I understand your thoughts. Eva. What are you discussing? He's your uncle. Sounds insane. I'm aware. However, there is no denying this relationship. I made an effort to ignore it. It was in my head, I told myself. However, the air felt electrified whenever we were by ourselves. As though we were being drawn together by something. This is when the exciting part begins. I was working on a project in my room one evening after supper when I heard footsteps coming down the corridor. Nathan had spent hours dozing off. Victoria was out with friends, so we were alone. At first, I didn't give it much thought, but then I heard his bedroom door creak open. I wasn't sure if I should go inside or leave him to rest, but something drew me in. I opened the door carefully so as not to wake him, and he was lying on his back with one arm behind his head, appearing content. His face was softly shadowed by the window light while he slept, giving him an almost indestructible appearance. I remained there for a while. My heart is pounding. My face was starting to blush. My heartbeat quickens. I had never had this feeling before. Perhaps all I wanted to do was gaze at him. Or it might have been more. Had no idea. I was thinking when I unintentionally knocked over a vase next to his bed. Nathan stirred at the sound. He opened his eyes. And we looked at each other for a moment. The look in his eyes was bewildered. But another thing. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. He gave a couple blinks. Tried to concentrate on me. Then chuckled groggily. Eva. Why are you here? He inquired. He spoke in a sleep-heavy voice. I was having trouble finding the perfect words, and my heart was pounding. I didn't want to appear to be prying. I was at a loss for words, though. My mouth became parched. It wasn't my intention to wake you. I stumbled. I'm humiliated. Nathan slowly sat up, rubbing his eyes. He gave me a smile. The same type. He always smiled patiently. However, he had a new look in his eyes today. My heart pounded at something. After examining me for a while, he resumed his conversation. It's all right. Gently, he said. You can talk to me at any time. Eva. I'm available to you. Gave a nod. However, my thoughts were racing. I had no idea how to handle this odd sensation. It was heavy in the room. I also sensed that my breath was coming more quickly. All I wanted to do was talk. I muttered. Nathan's smile dimmed slightly. And before it disappeared, I believed I caught a little pause in his eyes. He gave the bed beside him a pat. Come on over here. Next. You can speak with me at any time. Warmly, he said. I remained there for a while. Not sure. But I was propelled ahead by something inside of me. Without giving it much thought, I took a seat beside him. There was a lot of tension between us. Heavier than before. His body next to mine was hot to the touch. The air was filled with his cologne. I could hear his breathing and feel his chest rising and falling with each breath because we were so close. My heart pounded once again. And gradually, in slow motion almost, I glanced up at him. I could feel his warmth because our faces were so near. His eyes were gentle. Not sure. However, there was another factor. My skin tingled from a spark. Eva. Are you all right? Gently, Nathan inquired. Before I could respond, I inclined myself toward him. My breath seized in my chest, and my pulse was pounding. I was unable to describe it, but it all felt so intense, as if the air itself had a charge. Nathan did not retreat. With silent intensity, his eyes met mine. He remained silent, but he breathed more rapidly, like mine. It was warmer in the room. Unspoken comments caused the stillness between us to grow deeper. My thoughts were racing. It had all culminated in this moment. I was unable to stop myself. I leaned in slowly. My mouth quivers like I'm dreaming. They touched his. It wasn't sure at first. Tentative. Then again. His mouth touched mine. Gentle and soft. I was unable to stop myself. My brain begged me to quit. However, my body resisted. This was what I needed. This is what I wanted. Nathan cupped my cheek with his hand, pushing me in. He put his other hand down next to us, rubbing on my skin. His touch was hot to the touch. The kiss grew more intense. Before long, it was difficult to distinguish between his and my lips. After then, the world vanished. Only the two of us were there, trapped in this indisputable link. Confusion surged through my head. Shame. But with an odd sense of righteousness, too. What were we doing? What made it seem so essential? Words could hardly describe it. There is no reason for it. He withdrew for a brief instant. I pressed his forehead to mine. We were having trouble breathing. Slow and unsteady breaths. His pulse was palpable against my flesh, just as fast as my own heartbeat. Eva. He spoke softly, restrained by a deeper force. We ought not to. However, I wasn't certain. Yes, I did agree. There was something inside of me that would not accept any excuse for stopping. Slowly, I grabbed his hand. My fingers entwined with his. He did not retreat. He wrapped his fingers around mine, clinging to me as firmly as I was clinging to him. We looked at each other, and for quite a while, we didn't talk. Everything hovered between us like a weight. Shall we? Could we? Naturally, my hand went to the nape of his neck, drawing him in. I gave him another kiss. This time, there was no hesitancy. Don't be afraid. Simply the overwhelming want to remain near him, to sense his presence. Nathan ran his hand down my spine, bringing me in closer. It all felt so intense as our bodies touched one another. I have no idea where this was going. I didn't care though. I wanted to hold on to the time when we were the only two of us. His lips found my neck and my heart thumped in my chest, kissing me tenderly on the flesh. His breath brushed across my ear, causing my spine to tingle. I had never felt anything like it before. Close, eating, and terribly incorrect. It was exciting though, in a way I couldn't describe. Are you certain of this? He whispered against my flesh. His voice was full with passion. I do not wish to cause you harm. I shut my eyes. I'm looking for my voice. My entire being cried out for me to quit, to withdraw. However, I was unable to. The desire was too great. The necessity is too strong. I had had enough of thinking. Didn't want to raise any doubts. All I wanted was to spend time with him. I'm positive, I muttered, my fingers gliding across his chest. I could feel his skin's warmth under my fingers. This is what I desire. Nathan. Desire you. His mouth met me once more. The kiss was deeper this time. More pressing. Now there was no going back. It didn't matter what the outer world was like. Only the way he made me feel existed. Wanted. Required. And living in a manner I had never known. We felt as though the room was closing in on us. As the strength of our connection increased, the light dimmed. Every contact. It seemed like something more was promised with each kiss. Something we didn't really comprehend. However, both of us are prepared to explore. His heartbeat was steady against mine, syncing in time with my own beat. Even yet, there was still a part of me that struggled to accept the truth of what was happening. A far greater portion of me gave up entirely. It had evolved beyond simple kissing. There was more to it than that. I was unable to explain the relationship. A connection that transcended language. I've had this desire for a very long time, Nathan muttered. My lips feel the warmth of his breath. As my hands moved over him, I could hardly understand what he was saying. He could feel the muscles under his skin, his heat, the way that he answered me. But now there was no going back. All that was pulling us together was the pull. In a manner that neither of us anticipated. We became so engrossed in one another that time appeared to stop. The soft cadence of our kisses, the warmth of our contact, and everything felt right for the first time. We were more than just uncle and niece in the silence of the room. We shared a deeper bond as two individuals. I had never experienced something that intense. There was a lot of tension in the air between Nathan and me. Neither of us is moving. Neither of us is saying anything. The sound of the entrance door opening downstairs abruptly broke the silence. We stopped. My heart pounded. And I drew away from Nathan right away. My chest was flooded with panic. What did we just do? What was going on between us? I felt a wave of guilt. However, it was mixed with another substance. I couldn't ignore my need. I was caught between the fact that we were involved in something and the moment we had just had. We couldn't simply reverse it. Nathan took a while to move. His gaze was fixed on mine. His face, however, was unreadable. The fire between us was palpable. The residual intimacy that had not yet faded. Eva, he muttered. He spoke in a strained tone. Before he finished speaking, footsteps reverberated up the stairs. Nathan heard a voice I knew right away. My heart fell. Victoria was the one. I jumped off the bed in a hurry. My breathing was shallow and rapid. I had no idea what to do. My thoughts were racing everywhere. However, I was unable to come up with a solution. After everything that had just transpired, was I really going to confront her? Nathan's chamber door squeaked open. There she was, Victoria, standing in the entrance. Her expression was one of surprise. Her gaze shifted from Nathan to me. Her expression changed to one of confusion as she absorbed the situation. Eva. Nathan. What's happening? She inquired. She spoke in an unsure tone. However, there was another factor. An instinct, perhaps, that indicated a problem for her. The blood was dripping from my face. It was like a bucket of cold water to have Victoria around. And at that precise moment, it all felt wrong. This could not be explained. There was no way to excuse what Nathan and I had just experienced. I strained to find the right words, and my throat constricted. I stumbled. unsure about how to respond. Nathan, currently seated on the bed, seems to be lost. He stroked the nape of his neck, obviously embarrassed. I don't know how to describe it. Victoria looked at me instead of him. Additionally, we had an unwritten agreement. As if, in that one instant, everything changed. Victoria was aware that something had occurred. It shouldn't have happened. However, I didn't anticipate her response. Rather than disappointment or rage, only a deep was present. Her eyes had an eerie melancholy about them. She entered the space. She shut the door after herself. She was a formidable presence. And there was an oddity in the room. Tense quiet. Similar to the quiet before a storm. Eva, you must comprehend something. Victoria spoke softly. She spoke in a milder tone than I expected. This is more complicated than you think. Greater than each of you realizes. I gave her a look. My head is flooded with confusion. What was she trying to say? What else was there? Even after Victoria went, there was still stillness. Her words lingered in the atmosphere, making a lasting impression on us both. In spite of all the uncertainty, I received something unexpected from her cool comprehension and offer of advice. Hope. Victoria wasn't upset. She didn't ignore us. Rather, she allowed us to try. A chance that seemed brittle and unknowable. However, it remains there. I looked at Nathan. His expression was a mix of confusion, guilt, and something more I couldn't quite place. He was trying not to look at me. He rubbed his hands uncomfortably. I was aware that the events had weighed heavily on him. The unforeseen collision of our universes. However, the more I considered it, the more I understood that nobody had any plan for this. We had no control over the course of events. I felt certain that we couldn't overlook it. We couldn't act as though nothing had occurred. Victoria was correct. The emotions and perplexity. Everything needed to be taken care of. And it needed to be confronted directly. Nathan, I muttered. My voice was a little shaky. Now what should we do? Nathan gave me a glance. His eyes were filled with a range of feelings. I'm not sure. Eva. I'm not sure how to feel. What to consider. I'm not sure if I should be upset, feeling ashamed, or whether I am permitted to feel anything at all. His voice broke. His remarks betrayed the internal conflict. He struggled to balance his allegiance to Victoria with the strong bond we had formed. His spouse. One chat was insufficient to resolve the issue. It was not that easy. I inhaled deeply before approaching him, reducing the gap between us. I wanted to console him by reaching out to him. However, I wasn't certain if that was the appropriate course of action. I had lost my sense of what was proper. We won't figure everything out just yet, in my opinion. I spoke quietly. However, I believe we should speak. Must be truthful with one another. This is too complex to overlook. Nathan gave a slow nod. He had a solemn expression. Not furious, though. Am aware. I'm not sure where to begin. I grasped his hand. The contact was both reassuring and brimming with unsaid feelings. Admitting what happened is the first step. How we felt. How we still feel. After that, we decide what to do next. He gave another nod. A slight softening of his expression. It will not be simple, Eva. But I'd like to know. I'd like to know what's going on between us. I gave his hand a squeeze. The touch was consoling and brimming with feelings that were not expressed. I don't know everything, Nathan. I have no idea what will happen next. I'm not escaping this, though. No more. For a while we sat in silence. Both were deep in contemplation, attempting to interpret all that had transpired. There was no obvious path ahead. No simple solutions. The feelings. The misunderstanding. Everything was very overwhelming. Victoria, however, had provided us with a lifeline. The area to confront everything collectively. To face the chaos we had become entangled in. I gave Nathan another glance. For the first time, too. Regardless of what transpired next, I felt that we would confront it head-on. There was no ideal answer. There is no easy solution. However, there was still hope. Hope for comprehension and recovery. Perhaps even for a higher purpose. Leaned back. All the options were flying through my mind. I kept thinking about Victoria, as well as her words. I was unaware that a door had been opened by her composure and offer of understanding. She hadn't turned us away. We hadn't been condemned by her. Rather, she had made space for us, to allow for breathing room, to digest what had transpired. However, what would come next? What would happen? If we acknowledged the intensity of our remaining emotions, could we proceed? Or would it all be too much to bear? However, those were questions best left for another day. Nathan and I were alone, sitting side by side in the quiet of our mutual doubt. We were both aware that nothing would ever be the same. Taking the next move was our only option, whatever it is, and in some way, together, we'd work things out.